Hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome in. If this is your first time clicking on one of my videos, first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time. I hope you find this information that's shared today valuable. My name is Kobe Cornell Boone. I am managing director and founder of Boone Capital. We are a Reg D 506C private equity firm and real assets. So, all things timber, land, ranches, real estate, and all the wonderful things that come along with the outdoors. As the video suggests today, we're going to talk about the five things that every data center developer needs. And what I hope you take away from this video today is just a clear understanding of why different components have so much value with this particular space and what exactly they're looking for, whether you're acquiring land, whether you're interested in investing in data centers or the energy sector, most specifically with data centers and how they're developing those. Or if you're a private landowner, man, and just interested to have a little more education. I think there's a lot in the news, but just more education on some of the numbers you're probably seeing and why. So let's dive headfirst into it. Most people see a data center and they think it's just a big building, if you will. But it's not. A data center is an infrastructure project. And before a server goes online, before AI models run, before there's ever a customer that gets any of that capacity, a developer has to solve five major constraints. Those constraints are power, water, fiber, land, and permits. Run that back. Power, water, fiber, land, permits. And I think this is where most people kind of misunderstand the AI boom. They think that the story is only about chips and software and models and things that they can't see, right? But underneath all of that is a physical world of utilities, land, substations, transmission lines, water systems, highways, roads, engineering, and also a collaboration, if you will, with your local government. So local approvals as well for those permits. And that's what we're kind of breaking down today. So I'm going to talk about power first. The first requirement is power, not a nice to have power, but massive, reliable, industrial scale power. Power, lots of it. According to Lawrence Berkeley National Lab and the Department of Energy, U.S. data centers used about 176 terawatt hours of electricity in 2023, up from 58 terawatt hours in 2014. Now, by 2028, that number is already projected to be upwards of 325 to 580 terawatt hours, potentially 6.7% to 12% of the total US electricity consumption. And guys, that's not a small operational expense. That is national infrastructure level issue, right? So just stay with me. CBRE actually says power availability is now the top site selection factor for new data center development, if you will. And some projects are now looking for 250 megawatts, 500 megawatts. I've even seen some 750 plus megawatts of power. So when people ask where will the next data centers go, the answer is increasingly simple. It's where the power is, right? It's where the power is. Another component of it is the water piece, right? And I am huge. Anybody who's watched my videos on my channel, you know this. I am huge on water, and it is a requirement. Now that every data center let me take a step back. Not every data center uses water the same way. Some are using air cooling systems, others evaporative cooling, some are using liquid cooling, and some folks are even moving toward efficient cooling designs, if you will. But cooling is still a major issue no matter what avenue you're taking to go about it. Servers create heat, they get hot. AI workloads create even more heat, because I think that's important to know too, is that people tend to think that data centers only serve AI, and that's not the case. But the heat has to be managed. And That's why water access, water policy, and local water stress, especially when we're talking about Texas and Texas Triangle, if you will, that area between San Antonio, Austin, Houston, and Dallas, are becoming important site selection questions, right? Like a site might have great access to tons of power, but may not have access to water, and a developer can't just ask again that question of, can I buy the land? Can I afford to purchase this land? They have to ask, can this site support cooling? Can the local community support the water impact that would happen as a result of us building on this particular site? And is this water option that we do have reliable long term? And what is my political risk? What is my downside? What is my off ramp, if you will, for pursuing this and moving forward? Because if a community believes a data center threatens local water supply, that project may face quite a bit of resistance, no matter how much capital is actually being put behind it. So that is something where you're having that dialogue with your local government, and you're starting to see how this thing becomes more of a community project, definitely, I think, than people realize, about impact. So requirement number three, this is one I think most folks who have internet or lived in a rural area before that might be familiar with, and that's fiber. So third requirement, fiber. Fiber is not the cloud, first and foremost. And fiber is not AI. Fiber is also not a, well, let me say it like this: no fiber, you don't have a real data center business. Without fiber, you do not have cloud. And without fiber, you do not have AI. So data centers are not just building just buildings that are full of servers. They are connectivity hubs, if you will. Kind of got stumbled on my words there, but rock out. They're connectivity hubs. They need to move enormous amounts of data with speed, redundancy, and reliability. That means fiber routes matter. Network density matters. One of my best friends I just met with yesterday from Texas was a network engineer for over 10 years, military veteran, great friend of mine. And we're having conversations about just this. Latency, guys, latency matters. Redundancy matters. A site can have land and power, but if it's poorly connected, it may not work for the right users, right, who are operating on that center. This is why infrastructure corridors matter as well, like your power corridors, your fiber corridors, your highway corridors, your economic corridors. Growth follows that connectivity. In a different video, I actually use an example using some of these markers that I have here, and I was explaining how land is one piece, the connectivity of these corridors sits kind of in the middle, and then your upside, your alpha, if you will, your opportunity sits over here, and how that opportunity follows the growth corridors, the connectivity, which touches back on the real infrastructure, which is the land piece, but it flows in that direction, if you will, not vice versa. Because if I take these off the play, then my value of that land significantly decreases. And hopefully you can see these pins. I don't think you guys could actually see that. So let's break it down just a little bit. But that was kind of my example that I had there. And I think it's so important that we look at it from that way, because you start to better understand the value of a piece of property when all those components are connected. So let's go to number 4, which is the land, right? So it's not just any land, it's strategic land. I can't stress that enough. Like, that is it really was the point of the second video that we had in this series, that most investors look at acreage, right? And infrastructure investors look at optionality. For data centers, land has to solve multiple problems at once. It needs enough acreage, it needs access, it needs zoning capability, it needs proximity to power, it needs proximity to fiber, it needs road access, it needs room for substations, setbacks, stormwater, security, and future expansion. And it needs to be in a location where the project can actually get approved. That's super huge, guys. That's why a smaller tract near infrastructure can be worth more than a much larger tract, say 1,000 acre tract, if you will, with no access, no utilities, and no development path that's going to be growing there. Raw land is not the asset per se in this world. Strategic land is the asset. And I say in this world because there's different factors obviously that come into play when we're talking about grazing and cattle and some of those type of deals. But in this world, strategic land is the asset. So number five, permits. The fifth requirement is one that I think most people kind of underestimate and might possibly be the most polarizing aspect, I would say, in this world is you can have capital, you can have land, you can have a tenant, you can have a great thesis, but if you can't get the approvals, you do not have a project. CBRE actually reported almost 6,000 megawatts of data center capacity under construction in primary North American markets at the end of 2025. But I also noted that many planned projects are delayed by permitting, zoning, and power procurement hurdles. That's where the devil's in the details, guys. That's the needle in the haystack. That is the ability to go in and procure a clean path for development, and that's dealing with people, right? That's dealing with people. That's dealing with local government. That's dealing with policies. So again, that tells you what's important is that the bottleneck is not just the demand. The bottleneck is execution. Local governments matter. Communities matter. Utility approvals matter, and environmental considerations matter as well. I'm personally very big on that with how we develop sustainably without increasing our impact on the environment and for negative connotations down the line towards the future. So, water concerns matter, traffic concerns matter, noise concerns matter, noise pollution. That's another huge one, man. You're seeing, and again, like I said, this section, the permitting side, this is where a lot of your articles that you see, a lot of your news. This is where a lot of those conversations are taking place around. Data center development is not just a real estate process; it is a stakeholder management process. So what is the infrastructure bottleneck, if you will? So if we put it together, the picture becomes a little bit clearer when you put all these components together. Data centers are not just real estate projects, they are infrastructure projects. They require power, water, fiber, land, permits, what we mentioned today. And every one of those categories, if you will, have their own potential bottlenecks. JLL actually says average grid connection wait times in primary data center markets now exceed 4 years, like 4 years. So if you think about that, right, like AI demand is moving at software speed, but infrastructure moves are moving at what they've kind of always moved at, which is permitting, utility construction, and capital project speed. And that gap is the opportunity. That gap is where your alpha lies. That's why I believe, again, that the next decade will reward people who understand the physical constraints and the people who understand land, because that's kind of where your intersectionality is taking place. That's where your alpha lies. And infrastructure delivery is a huge part of that because AI may live in software, but it runs on real assets. And that's probably like the biggest takeaway that I want you guys to understand from this video is that last line. AI lives in software, lives in a world that we cannot see. However, it runs on real assets regardless of the fact. So I think for anybody who's interested in this particular space, that would be where I would focus on. I'll use a metaphor here as I wrap up this video. When I was an athlete playing basketball, if you will, one of the key parts of defense, and I would say decent defensive player, if you will. I remember my coach always telling me to watch the person I was defending against waist. He was like, he can't go anywhere without his waist. Like whenever you're looking at the ball, don't look at the ball, look at his waist. And I find that to be the case here in the world that we're describing is that you can look AI can move one way, software can move another way, SaaS can move another way. Like all these things can be moving all over, right? But it can't move without that land. It can't move without those real assets. So that's where you want to kind of keep your eye. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you found value in it. This is part 3 of the Infrastructure Bottleneck Economy series. In my next video, so part 4, we're going to talk about kind of what I've learned by having conversations with different groups. I touched on environmental a little bit today. We're currently underwriting a 356-acre tract in Dallas County, Texas. We're super fired up and excited about it, and it's brought about so many of these conversations when we look at the multiple exit strategies and optionalities that this property presents. So if you find value in that, I just want to ask that you like, share, subscribe, send this to someone that you do know. If you found value in this video today, and leave a comment in the comment section. Really appreciate that feedback and that ability to go a little bit deeper into these conversations. But until next time, take care. God bless.